see what's out there.
Hello there, and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, an entertainment live video stream and podcast, which for the past few weeks has been focused on Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is available to watch in its entirety on Disney Plus. In today's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation around the series finale, part 6 of the limited series, as well as spoiling the entire series as a whole. So if you're a Star Wars fan and you've not yet watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, I suggest that you go watch the show first and then come back and check out what we've got to say. My name's Keith Isles. I am an independent filmmaker and enthusiast of cinema and television, and indeed Star Wars has been a big part of my filmmaking journey and my passion for this art form. So it's kind of where it all started for me. If it is the first time here on the channel, then welcome. Please do consider giving this video a like, subscribing to the channel, checking out some of the other work, and if you hit the bell notification, you will get informed as and when new content drops. Pleased to say that today I'm not doing this solo. I am very, very pleased to be joined by two special guests, which are friends that I haven't seen in a while. They are sibling filmmakers that work individually or sometimes together on various projects. They're both incredibly talented individuals, and I'm interested to see what they've got to say about the galaxy a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So welcome, Sam and George Clemens. Welcome both.
Hello. Thank
Hello
you.
there.
Hi, Keith. Lovely to see you again.
It's good to see you too.
Oh, I like the mug. Yes.
Oh yeah, I got the Yoda mug, courtesy of my mum. Yes, indeed. Yes. So how are you both?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, great. Keeping busy.
Excellent. Well, I definitely want to hear about your various projects before the end of this video, and I've got links for anyone watching out there. I've got links to these guys' website and the work they've been doing, etc., in the show notes below. So once this is over and you finish watching this, please check out their work. As I said, you guys have done some really exciting stuff, and as I said, it's been a while since we've got to catch up. So I'm glad that we're able to come and talk. You know, we always talk film and television whenever we meet, because I know you guys are as passionate about that as I am. But I've never known with you guys where you really stand with regards to Star Wars. So I wondered, before we get into the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and this particular chapter of it, maybe you guys could give us a brief history on sort of where Star Wars fitted into your lives when you first saw it, what it means to you as individuals. I'll tell you what, George, I'll start with you.
Well, I am a massive Star Wars geek. I'm guess what you'd call a purist a little bit. Like I very much grew up on the original trilogy. Got toys galore. If you go to my bedroom back home, it's just full of collectibles and everything to do with it. So it's been a big sort of influence. I mean, when anyone asks you sort of what's your favorite film of all time, I mean, it's an impossible question, but if I'm pushed to shove, I'd have to say Star Wars, just because of how it sort of influenced me sort of growing up and dressing up as various characters and whatnot, and, you know, badgering our mum and dad for every toy under the sun, amongst other things. But yeah, I mean, as a kid, I must have watched the original ones like hundreds of times, and continue to now every time there's a new release, like when it's brought out in 4K recently, for example, I'll jump on that because it's always nice to see it in a new format and see how it holds up against all that. And yeah, it's one of my favorite series, and I always get very excited when they release a new one. I mean, that can lead to massive disappointments. I mean, I'm not a fan of the prequels at all. There's elements of it that I really like, but they just didn't hit the mark. And it wasn't really for me until The Mandalorian came in that really kind of hit home for like that's what we've been missing. I mean, there are other films like Rogue One and stuff that I thought did a decent enough job, but Mandalorian's the first one that's nailed it for me since the original trilogy.
Right. Interesting. What about you, Sam? Is it a similar story?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, like, you know, we're children of a certain era, and I think that it's what gets to you first, you know, like, and because I direct a lot of Doctor Who, I was in that bracket when pretty much we didn't have a Doctor, and I think that I would have been slightly more of a Doctor Who fan earlier if it had got to me, but it was off television. And the thing that got me absolutely was Star Wars. I mean, we had videos of Star Wars, of the trilogy, that I think Dad managed to get for us. I think even before they were out on video. So we had copies of them very, very early. I remember they looked like bookcases, those old VHSs that were like that. And we wore them down to death. I mean, I remember my dad, I'd get him up in the morning, probably, I think about now must have been 3:30, 4 a.m. to watch it. And I couldn't watch it alone. I had to get him up, and he'd get up and he'd lie on the floor with a wafer thin pillow, obviously like, please just let me go to sleep, while I could watch, you know, Luke, Leia, and Han, and Chewie, and, you know, all that. And I was happy with it, with either one of the trilogy. But yeah, I mean, it really sort of, the idea that we're talking now about Star Wars 1977 is remarkable, but also the fact that there is a platform to be able to do that. When we were at school, the idea of having a film club, or even talking about, there was nothing related to film as film even being an option on any form of curriculum. It was just a stupid hobby that you would have, and you geeked out. I suppose like the game world, and now gaming is becoming more lucrative, and it's becoming a real, you know, powerhouse industry. So for me, this is just amazing that we've come. I've wanted this since I was a kid, to be able to sit and talk about it. So, but in terms of what I like about the Star Wars, I suppose, I am a little bit more like George in that way. I think I'm not a huge fan of the prequels, because I think they look cheap and awful, and they don't look like the same world in any way. I wasn't the biggest fan of the latest ones, because I knew that they hadn't written them as a trilogy. They were written one after the other, so they were just solving each other's problems. So there was no real arc. And I think Mandalorian, for me, was the best, or the most, I don't know, that childhood joy of seeing a used, battered world where we're just being involved with characters. Because the beauty about Mandalorian is that it's a new group of people that we're having to get to know, exactly like the original trilogy. We're getting get to know a whole new load of people. And it's really based on Shogun Assassin, which is, if you think that Star Wars is based on Hidden Fortress and, you know, the Kurosawa films, and this is based on, you know, the films of Lone Wolf and Cub, really, which is what Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are, or Grogu. I think the source material they picked correctly from a great piece of source material to be able to then do their own thing with it.
Yeah. No, I do find that quite interesting, because I had my 3 of my buddies from film school on last week, and we said exactly the same thing. In fact, in so much as we'd have loved to have had the means to do a show like this back when we were at film school, because we used to talk about stuff all the time, you know, and it's great that we're able to do it. But again, they're of, you know, the same generation. We're all of sort of the same generation here, and I find that most friends and people of our generation that are Star Wars fans, they all tend to say the same thing, you know, about the fact that they love the original trilogy. The prequels, you know, although they like bits of it, you know, didn't quite sort of fit in with them. And yes, apart from Rogue One and The Mandalorian, hadn't really embraced the newer stuff, the Disney Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, and things of that nature. So it's quite interesting, I think, that sort of perspective. And did you guys watch the Book of Boba Fett? Did you check that one out?
Yeah.
Or shall we say Mandalorian season 2.5?
Absolutely. Yeah. So did you like that one?
Yeah, I really liked it. It's just I think Sam felt the same as well. I just felt like Boba Fett spent too much time getting kicked around. Like, for someone who's supposed to be such a threatening bounty hunter. Like, you know, they created so much wonderful mystique about him, even though he was only in the film for like 5 minutes of the original trilogy. And I like what they've done with the character, and I do like they gave that actor another shot after the prequels, because he does do a very good job. But I just felt there was more where he needed to be hardcore, because it just, you know, they get the balance right in The Mandalorian, where he's a bit clunky in places, but he has his hardcore moments. Whereas Boba Fett, I didn't really feel had as much time to shine. And the reason I say Mandalorian 2.5 is because when he came into it, it suddenly got a lot better.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But I feel like, I just felt that we spent a lot. I felt like Boba Fett was just rubbish at fighting. Like, he just suddenly was just useless at being able to do anything. And I think he's a bounty hunter. And I just thought, and I understand, I remember Jon Favreau saying you can't have someone that's just amazing and kicking ass all the time. They have to go through a problem. But I think that went the wrong way, or it went too much one way. I think we needed to see some elements of brilliance of why we're watching him, and why, you know, what does he bring to the Sand People, as well as what do they give him? Like, what is the, you know, it's got to be a two-way street. And I felt that I felt like I was watching him just being kicked around and being, you know, for most of that series, and sort of being undermined a lot. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I loved the world. I like, you know, I thought there's some great characters and cameos and great bits in it. But yeah, it was inconsistent. I think that the writing was inconsistent more than anything else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's quite interesting because I did a show of this format for Book of Boba Fett as well. And I really struggled because my usual co-host on the Star Trek shows, Pete Mealy, he's a Star Trek guy and he's a Marvel guy and whatever, likes those sort of things, but really isn't a Star Wars guy, and didn't want to do the show. So I was trying to get different guests on each week. And it was funny because it was a real struggle to get people to come on and talk about Book of Boba Fett. However, with this, I've now got almost like the opposite problem, because I had all the guests lined up for the 6 weeks. I know we'd been talking backwards and forwards about which week we could fit you. You know, you could fit.
Last one to be on. This is the
last one. There we go. But now I've had so much interest that I'm actually thinking about having another panel on, and maybe doing it as I mistakenly said at the beginning this because it's been a long day and I was in autopilot mode, and I said a live stream. Well, we're not actually live. This is going out, you know, recorded. But I am actually thinking about maybe doing a panel sort of round table thing in a couple of weeks' time, a retrospective, and actually doing it as a live stream, so that if viewers out there want to comment and get involved in the show, they can, because I would like to know what, like, the Zoomer generation, for example, think of this Disney Star Wars, because like you said, the OG generation for Star Wars, you know, we don't necessarily, you know, the newer stuff. It's always the stuff that revolves around the original trilogy. You know, The Mandalorian is 5 years after the original trilogy. This is 10 years before the original trilogy, and it's you know, always in that area, isn't it? Never the stuff that's way before or way after, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of my favorite things of Star Wars was the Genndy Tartakovsky animated series. I thought that I genuinely think that is one of the best bits of Star Wars that has ever been made, and I would give Genndy Tartakovsky all the money to go and make something. I just think that the vision of it was just so clear and interesting, and it did things that I wanted to see and didn't know I wanted to see until I saw it, you know. And I just thought it was fantastic. And
I'm so glad you said that, Sam, because that is kind of largely forgotten now. You know, it's like it's not considered, you know, hard canon anymore, and it kind of got overshadowed by the, you know, the CG Clone Wars series, which obviously Lucas produced with Filoni and you know, ran for a long time. And it kind of, I mean, it didn't really tread on it, but that it was almost like those original 2D animations. They set the style, and they sort of picked up the story earlier. And I before Ahsoka. Yeah,
that had been what the prequel trilogies were. I'd have a very different opinion of them. That's for sure, because it made sense of so many problems in the prequel. Like, you know, Grievous for me was completely useless in the films. It's like, what's the point? And then
Yeah.
that little animated series shows how terrifying he can be, but it also shows why he's so useless in the third film, because obviously he has that fight and gets his whole chest crushed just before he tries to escape.
And also, it's slightly Grievous is based on the Carly in Golden Boy to Sinbad, which our father wrote and created.
There we go. It's all connected.
All connected.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I did sort of think of you guys as well when in Book of Boba Fett. We will get onto Obi-Wan in a minute. In Book of Boba Fett, they had that creature that was very kind of Harryhausen-esque, didn't they? At one point, and it reminded me of something that, like, from one of the Sinbad films or whatever. Which
the Rancor, is that the Rancor?
No. It was in the first episode.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it came out of the sand. It was like a sort of four-armed creature.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a lot of people saying, giving me the name and saying, "Oh, you haven't got the name right" or whatever. But I can't remember what they called it. But it was like this sand creature.
Well, that's
type
the difference,
thing.
Actually. What's interesting is you say that we can't remember the name. How many times have we all watched Star Wars? 1 million times. How many times have we watched these? Probably once.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because there's so much more to watch.
Yeah, so
there's
you
so much
to go back. Yeah. Which is
cool. No, absolutely. But no, I'm a real fan of those early Clone Wars cartoons, and you know, there was important stuff in that. You saw Anakin lose the Padawan braid in that, didn't you? You saw him get the scar, I think, that he had in the Clone Wars and in the third film and stuff.
Well,
so
it showed his journey to Darth Vader. If they did what they did in that series, it'd make a lot more sense. Like in the films, it just seemed like he just got annoyed for no reason. Through a little childish temper tantrum and just goes, right, I'm going to the dark side. It made no sense.
Yeah, he has a similar moment, because I've not seen it for a long time. I mean, he has a similar moment to Luke in Empire Strikes Back, seeing his face in the Darth Vader.
Yeah, he goes through the cave and all that.
And it's great having that. It's just like, I thought it was brilliant. And the reason, again, it works is because of the source material. It's using the source material, which is the samurai and the Buddhist mythology of transposed for the Force. And I think sticking to some of the source material, and as I said, that's why I think the Mandalorian works so well, is that you go back and you keep going back to what is the source, what was the original inspiration. Like if you go and listen to, I think it's King's Row, I might be wrong, which is what John Williams clearly listened to before doing the theme for Star Wars. It just is Star Wars. It's amazing. But you go to the source of what that composer was going to, and you use. I think he used some Holst in there and whatever, didn't he? And it's very similar to that bit at the beginning with the blockade runner and whatever. Yeah, the themes. But yeah, well, we love John Williams. Everything he does. One of the guests on the last week was saying that he's a musician, and he said that for him, the thing that has kept Star Wars alive for him outside of the original trilogy was the music. Anything that John Williams was involved in was perfect. And I agree, because the music in the prequels is fantastic as well, isn't it?
It gave us one of the greatest themes, the Duel of Fates, which
without John Williams, I think the films would nowhere near be. I think all the filmmakers would say the same. It wouldn't be anywhere near as successful, because it's just he elevates. I mean, I do think that when the time comes when John Williams is no longer with us, I think he will be regarded as the greatest film composer that has ever lived, beyond anyone, beyond Bernie Herrmann. But I think he is the greatest film composer that has ever lived. He's just remarkable. And I think I saw a thing on the socials today that Indiana Jones 5 might be his last score that he is going to do, that he's going to throw the towel in, which I think is not a bad run.
No, absolutely.
And I do think that some of these series, I think they fall down in that area quite a lot, the musical side of it. I think Rogue One trying to do some weird fanfare at the beginning was just awful. It didn't work for me. Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. The only thing I will say in Michael Giacchino's defense, because I do like Michael Giacchino's work generally.
I love Michael Giacchino.
Yeah, he came in as a last minute replacement, I think, to the composer they had lined up for it, and I think he turned that round in something like 3 weeks. And he did make homage to some of the Williams themes as well, a bit like they did in this episode. But I agree with you. It's much as I love that film, it's not quite perfect. And one of the things is the fact that things like the music and I actually missed the. I know they said with the Star Wars story films, the anthology films or whatever, they weren't going to do a crawl because it wasn't part of the saga. But I kind of missed the crawl. I think they should all start like that,
It gets you excited for the build-up and the twinkling music that's coming. Yeah, I totally agree.
Even the Dark Horse comic books had a crawl on their opening page, with the yellow text and everything.
That's why I think it took me a while to get like to accept the musical language for Mandalorian.
Yes,
it took me a long time for me to go. That doesn't sound like Star Wars. That doesn't feel like Star. It took a long time for me to. Now the theme has got me, and now when I hear it, I get that same. But it's taken a long time because your preconceptions are John Williams. So, and we are the OG era, aren't we? Or around that time. And I think that when I speak to young people, it's, as I said at the beginning, it's what got you at that formative period in your life. And so the prequels for many young people and they have so much affection and love for them, which we don't. So it's George Lucas apparently was right. It still worked.
Yes,
for children. Yeah, for the little,
absolutely. All right, well let's get into this latest episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I always invite the guest just to do a brief overview of the thing. So you may fire when ready.
So Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 6. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I think that this really is where we get Obi-Wan having to confront Vader for the first proper time before A New Hope, and how that plays out, and will Luke be involved in that triangle as Leia has been previously, and also what Reva's intentions are going to be, and what her fate we discover is held in the balance, and how that plays out in this episode as well.
Fair enough. Yep. No, absolutely. And the other thing I like to do, which I will cover real quickly, is thank the maker. Now, this is just where each week I have a look at some of the production credits of the people behind the scenes who, as I know Sam and George will agree, are incredibly important to filmmaking. Obviously, this whole series has been directed by Deborah Chow and written by Joby Harold and his team, who we've talked about at length in previous episodes. But I wanted to actually look at some of the other visuals. We've talked about the director of photography, and we've talked about the music and all this sort of thing. So I wanted to look at the costume design, which I hope I get pronunciations correct here. Costume designer for this show is Suturat Ann Larbab, and her credits, they include, recently, she also was the costume designer for No Time to Die, the last Bond film, and has obviously been across this entire series of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But previous to that, had worked on American Gods, the TV series, the Steve Jobs film back in 2015, 2011's Frankenstein, and earliest credit goes back to working with Danny Boyle in 2007 on Sunshine, and 2008 on Slumdog Millionaire as costume designer. So again, a fabulous job across this, everything from Darth Vader's classic costume to the sort of robes that Obi-Wan wears, and the look for the new Inquisitors and whatever has been very, very nicely crafted. And then, of course, the other aspect is production design, which there's 2 credits here. It's Todd Chernowski and Doug Chang. Now, Todd's previous credits, Todd's worked in the industry in the art department for some years, but as actual production designer, goes back to 2009 with Splice, but has also done production design on Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. So is quite involved in science fiction production design, whether that's, old in a galaxy far, far away, or in our galaxy in the future with Star Trek. So some good credits there. And Doug Chang has a long history with Star Wars, going back to the prequels, working on the art department for those and a lot of other fantastic films. But as actual production designer, 2004's The Polar Express by Robert Zemeckis, and Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which we've already talked about there. Anna has indeed also done the production design on The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. So well and truly entrenched in the Star Wars universe. So excellent stuff there indeed. I always like to get those sort of shout outs. I mean, guys, as filmmakers yourself, let's talk about that aspect for a minute. What have you thought about the sort of general look and feel of this show? I mean, we've talked about the musical aspect briefly, but the visuals, which of course is a heavy part of Star Wars, do you feel like you're in the same world as that original trilogy when you look at this stuff?
Certainly in the sort of, when you're in the Tatooine areas and the more sort of dilapidated places, because that's obviously rings home with, what we grew up on and stuff. I think it still falls into the same problem that the prequels do, that whenever they go to a modern city, that's when it sort of takes me out a bit, because it starts feeling more CG. When it's back in the desert and whatever, it all looks seamless. But as soon as you're in that city, it still takes me out a little bit. It's not quite there, even though the production design is fantastic. I mean, even when Leia's running through all the markets and stuff, that looks great. And they obviously fill it out with plenty of background creatures and lots going on. So they really do fill the world out, which is great. But yes, it's I think it's always been a problem with Star Wars for me. Is as soon as you're on somewhere like Coruscant, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't ring as true as the originals.
Fair enough. Well, what about for you, Sam?
Well, what's interesting about these series, which I'm sure you probably have covered before, but is the fact that they use virtual production, and production designers have to production design within the virtual world and the real world. And we know a little bit about that because we've made a short film using virtual production, and it is a very, very interesting way of working, but it is a different way of working, and all your post has to become pre. So you have to decide everything that you're doing ahead of time, and then you can sort of move things around. But so it's hard because I look at it and I can see where the joins are on lots of these things. Some of them are much better than others, but some of them I can see the screen technology. I know what they're doing. And when they built things into the foreground, like they have like pillars and bits that are built in, and then as it goes further back, you can see now that's the screen that's taking over. And I think that, like any of these things, when the first one is done, like Jurassic Park or Terminator 2, or any of the things that push the technology to a point where we go, oh my God, we have a new tool set. Those filmmakers were pushing themselves to the absolute limit of what was possible for them. Yeah. I mean, they will have been doing 16, 17-hour days to make sure it got there. And once that technology is now more readily available, there becomes a more relaxed attitude towards it. And that's why I think that, things like, the Jurassic Park films look worse than the original, because there's more of a reliance on the technology rather than the ingenuity to hide those things, but also use the practical elements. And I think that's why the Star Wars universe is better than some other, some other sci-fi shows and films, because they do focus quite heavily on the practical elements. And I think the more they do the practical in camera work, the better it looks. And I think that the production design in this world, this Disney world, is for the most part brilliant and totally, you feel like you're in it. It's just, I think, so obviously, with any of these things, we think that everyone and every filmmaker has all the money and time in the world, and they don't. And time is always the enemy. And sometimes they will have to compromise on things that they, you think, oh, well, they have all the time in the world. They don't have all the time in the world. Everyone's got schedules and things to do. So, there will be things that won't. I should imagine some of the filmmakers like, I wish I could go back and do that a bit better. We always feel that, like I'm sure anyone, you look back at your work and go, oh God, I could do that better. But
it's always that time, money, and energy paradigm, isn't it? Regardless of how many millions people perceive are thrown at these things, it's the resources.
Stanley Kubrick, or maybe Tom Cruise, or you need, or Christopher Nolan, or whatever. But they still will have the same problems, but I mean, just at a larger scale. But I do think that there is some things in this that are seamless and some things that are less seamless. And so it sort of marries the original trilogy with the prequel, because it's got this hybrid of both. So I suppose in a way it helps to lock those films or that universe together better. I don't know.
That's a really good way of phrasing it, actually, I think. And I love all your film references, because we are all so on the same page. It's hilarious. It's like the inner monologue. It's so with all the best references. But George, I know you do quite a lot post-production and editing as well as filmmaking. Have you? I mean, what Sam was saying there is using the sort of stagecraft technology that they now have. It is interesting how the sort of process is changed a little bit. So, we for a long time we had you try and do everything in camera, and you didn't really want to fix anything in post, and you try and do everything practically. And then filmmaking changed to, doing a lot more in post with VFX and CGI and green screening and all of this. And like Sam said, it's kind of, we've got this hybrid now. So from a from a process point of view, I mean, I don't know whether you've actually worked on anything where you've had to do some of the post but pre or anything like that. Have you got any thoughts on that or stories?
I mean, in terms of the what you're talking in terms of the virtual production process, that's not something I would necessarily have too much involvement in, because that's when you're talking Unreal artists and VFX artists. It's a different kind of skill set. But what it does do is it means that whole fix it and post thing becomes fix it and pre. Because from my perspective as an editor, it's great because it's locked into what's shot. So it's bringing the technology within the camera. So I know some directors are a bit hesitant, because if you're doing something with some form of creature, they can't change it after the fact. They're locked into it because it's on the screen. So there's certain things that they'll be like, I don't want to make that decision. I'd rather still do that as a CGI character after the fact. But if you're talking general kind of backdrops and vistas, then of course, because that's quite quick and easy to do. But from my perspective, I've only had a limited experience in terms of working with virtual production, whatnot, and I've had some experience of doing rotoscoping, composition, and all these little bits and pieces that just add little flair or take away, distractions from what's going on screen. And basically, what the virtual production, what the technology Disney's doing is sort of minimizing that work in a lot of sense, and in a way, it kind of, I think it helps the story, because it's like what happened when suddenly we had the new digital cameras coming in, and you weren't worrying about film anymore. You were just like, oh, we can just keep shooting and get whatever we want, because we're not running as much money up as we would in terms of film reels. So I think it brings you back to that thing where you've got to really think about your shots, your compositions, and for me, that's always going to make for a much better film, because it's not something that you're trying to think like. You should never be thinking, oh well, we can do that in post. Post should be your last resort. It should always be like, let's do it in camera, but having known the technology, and if you know enough about post, you'll be like, right, well, if we're on a schedule, something's gone wrong, you're just like, look, we don't want to, but we know that is something that we can potentially do at much time and effort in the post-production side of stuff. But wherever possible, obviously always keep it in camera, because it always looks better and it's more seamless. And it's, however good you are at these things, it can always be distracting to an audience. Like, or sometimes they go the other way and add too much. Like one of the films I referenced now is Mad Max Fury Road, which I loved. Right. And I love the fact they did all the stunts like live and everything else, but it didn't feel as good as the originals to me, because although they were doing it real, they added too much flair in. There was too many CGI body parts and things going on. And I was like, you don't need it. You've got this exciting stunt work going on where they're driving at 60, 70 miles an hour. You know, maybe throwing a few bullet hits, but you don't need all the extra blood and gore and stuff. You know, just again, it made something that was very real feel unreal, which is a bit of a shame. And I think
I think that's a really good reference, actually, because I always felt, Mad Max Fury Road, much as I admired it and whatever, for me, the Road Warrior, Mad Max 2, is still, that chase is way more visceral with the stunt work. And
look, Top Gun Maverick has proved that, like with that, we want it real, and it's better when it's real. It just is. Your eye can tell when it's not. And also, that's what visual effects and things should be for, is so you don't, you're not like Forrest Gump or things like that. Like Bob Zemeckis is a master at that in Contact and things, of just, you have no idea how much VFX work is in it, because it's totally seamless. You should be able to not notice it. That should be the best compliment. That was a visual effects shot. I thought it was totally real. That's what you want, isn't it? So, but we're obviously in Star Wars, so we're doing planets and creatures and things. But I love all the creatures, and the costume is great, and I love that they're going back to all the battered things and all the stormtroopers looking, a mess, and it's just, all of that is so much better. It just feels like a used world I think, and that's what the prequels. That's why they didn't work. Is it looked so clean that it didn't remotely resemble anything that happened in the original trilogy.
I agree. Both the clone troopers and the First Order stormtroopers that we get in the sequels, they just don't look as cool as those original stormtroopers. And so
I love the speed bikers. Oh, I love that.
No, absolutely.
Anyway, sorry. Probably talk about.
But all of these tools, obviously it's all about streamlining the process and using whatever works. But again, it all boils down to telling a good story and filming it. I'm curious, because I've heard mixed things about this in terms of the actual photography and whatever in this, and the use of camera. How have you felt about that on these shows? Because I have heard some say that even though Deborah Chow's done a fantastic job of anything that involves the emotion with the characters, or anything that involves tension, and building tension and everything, really good. But I've heard those say not so good on the actual action stuff, like the lightsaber fights. And I just wondered, do you have a view on that?
Well, I always thought that I still think one of the best ones is probably in the prequel. Actually, is the Darth Maul fight was absolutely stunning, and I still think Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi is still, because it's driven by a character desire. It's they have an objective, and they have a very strong emotional reason for what they're doing. And I think the prequels became what sort of floaty fight stance, how flary can I be with, and there was no intention, so we stopped caring, and then Yoda flying all about the place, and it just got a bit ridiculous. But in the new ones, like in this, like particularly in this episode, I would say that we are definitely much, like I feel like it's a good blend of both the prequel and the original trilogy in terms of style, because Darth Vader, you know, he is heavy in that suit. Moving in that suit for that actor is not going to be easy. You're not going to be fast, so you can only use power and force and things. And I think that trying to make Darth Vader be like lithe doesn't work, so they haven't done that. But Obi-Wan is, but they've got a real they've got almost two different fighting styles, which is interesting because they sort of didn't seem to have that in the prequel, because obviously Hayden Christensen was the same, you know, with the same sort of, you know, build and was learning from him, but he's really become a different fighter. So yeah, I don't know.
He's more machine than man now, as Obi-Wan said in Jedi, and it's true. I mean, we've seen him be put together, haven't we, with his, so yeah, it makes sense that he's going to be heavier and have a different fighting style as a result. So yeah. I think that it's the fighting aspect of it is sort of, we're spoiled for such amazing action work nowadays that it's like, how far can you go? What can you top it with? And I don't think it should ever be like what incredible stunt can you do. It should always be what is the desire of that character to do, and that will always make it much more impactful in whatever the violence is, because it's coming from a place of, I want to do this because of this that's happened previously. And there is definitely a lot more of that in this. I feel like camera work wise in it though, I don't really remember, and I might be wrong, I've not seen the original trilogy for a while, probably a couple of years now. I think the last time I saw it was on TV or something. But there feels that there's quite a lot of handheld work in this. And for me, all this doesn't say Star Wars. Yeah.
What it does is it brings me out and I'm looking at the filmmaker. Okay, oh, why have you chosen to do that? Why are we doing that? And I think that, you know, I know there are lots of incredible filmmakers out there, and I do say this, and it's not like, I think Steven Spielberg is a master because he's one of the only directors that you don't sit there and you're not aware of him. You're aware of the story as king, not the director. And I think that with Star Wars, that was really true, particularly of the original trilogy and even into the prequels. You're not so aware of the director. They're trying to really tell the story. And I think that the danger with some of these things is that it becomes, oh, look at me, look what I can do. I want to change it up. And there doesn't seem to be there seems a disconnect. I wouldn't particularly take everything off handheld. I'm only going from what my memory is of watching it once, this episode particularly. But yeah, that was something that I felt, you know, that pulled me out of it. That's one element that pulled me out.
I know what you mean, and you're right. I mean, any of this stuff is always better when it's emotionally driven, you know, by the character's intent, which is why the thing in Jedi is so great, because, you know, a lot of that is either the Emperor trying to manipulate Luke, or, you know, Luke lashing out when Leia is threatened, and all of this sort of thing. But what about you, George? Have you got any thoughts on that part?
I mean, I have to say, like, when it comes to Star Wars, I don't necessarily look at it with the filmmaker's eye. I like to just sort of get lost in the world a little bit. I mean, to be honest, it's the same with anything I watch. I start looking at it as a filmmaker, as an editor, if the story hasn't grabbed me and it's not working. So, as Sam says, I didn't really like the camera. It didn't really like jump out at me as anything else. I was more kind of interested in sort of what they were doing in terms of potential plot holes, or filling those gaps or not filling them. And also, like, the one thing is still a big problem in Star Wars is they still haven't really established what the rules are of the Force. It just seems whenever it's convenient to the filmmaker, someone will develop a new power or be suddenly a lot more powerful or whatever. And, you know, it's as fun as it is to see all these kind of action scenes, especially that last fight with Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. It just not so much from Darth Vader, because we know that's established, but when Obi-Wan suddenly goes Hark, I'm like, where's this suddenly coming from? I mean, I know it's you sort of getting back in touch with the Force, but I almost felt like he was a bit too hardcore. So that sort of, I don't know, that took me out a little bit.
Now that's cool. We will come to plot holes and all of that sort of thing. But talking of getting lost in the world,
Yeah.
Do a bit next called Bantha Milk Blue, which is where we look at Easter eggs. So here. Right, this is just a bit of fun. I know always after I've done these streams, I then go and check out a load of videos on YouTube to get other opinions and all this. And there's some fantastic channels that do this about Easter eggs and references and go, new rock stars, heavy spoilers. Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, who we did have on one of these shows once, unfortunately with technical difficulties, but and all that sort of thing. But I just wondered, just as a bit of fun, was there anything that stood out big time to you guys? I mean, obviously the whole show is an Easter egg, of course. It's all referencing that original trilogy. But I just wondered whether there was anything sort of blatant that made you smile while you were watching it.
There's a very obvious one, Qui-Gon. Can't get more blatant than that, obviously. I mean, for me, it's more like there's a lot of nods in this to the game Jedi Fallen Order, which I loved and played and stuff. So for me, that's where most of the Easter eggs happen. I can't remember what they're called, but I know there's a particular trooper that appears in Jedi Fallen Order, and this is the first time they brought it into the film world, which are particular hardcore. And obviously, as soon as they brought in the Inquisitors, I'm like, okay, where are they going? Because it's giving nods to that as a game, and if they go on, it's like, will they bring in the Jedi that's sort of you're playing as throughout that? That's kind of something a lot of people are wondering at this stage, because they've left it's set in the same sort of timeline, so you could easily, if you're doing a season 2, bring that in. But outside of those very obvious ones, I'm sure there's some I'm missing, but they're sort of the ones that jump out at me immediately, and obviously just in terms of sort of battle stances and stuff, in terms of like how Obi-Wan holds his sword up like that is a complete throwback to the Clone Wars and stuff like that. So they've kept consistency through canon, but it's always kind of difficult because it's always changing in Star Wars what's canon, what's not canon. So you're like, is this relevant now or is it not relevant? I'm not really sure anymore.
Yeah. And it's always, sometimes it's blatant fan service, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what about you, Sam? Did anything immediately stand out in this episode or this chapter?
Well, yeah, a few things. I mean, God, have we been waiting for the music?
Yes.
Thank God. This is what I hate about doing prequels or any of these things. Why do we have to earn the theme for so long? Like, it's usually like Bond, you don't get it till the last bit or whatever. And like, we want it from the beginning. The moment you see Darth Vader, you want dun, 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 dun. That's what we want. That's why we've turned on, give it to us now. Stop teasing us with it, because it gets you more excited. So the music, number one, is that we've come full circle.
Yeah. Now, it's funny actually, on one of the earlier episodes, it might have been the first one, one of my guests sort of made that comment about how even though they thought Natalie Holt was doing a good job with the music, they were really missing some of the themes. And I speculated at the time, I said, I wonder whether they're going to save that to the end. And certainly we got 3 of Williams' themes in this, didn't we? We got Vader's, Leia's, and the Force, So yeah.
I agree with that. But I do feel like this is because I love John Williams, but I do think the Obi-Wan theme is one of the weakest things that he's written. I don't think it's particularly the I was hoping for something a bit more sort of iconic from him. I would have taken something from the original trilogy and maybe done something, but I don't know. But I again, it's taken me the entire series to go, oh, okay, that's the theme. And I think that Obi-Wan, who's a legacy character, should have something straight away that we all go, yes. So for me, so I was so pleased musically. Because this is very fresh in my mind, there is this, I know we're going into the episode a little bit, but there's a circular element where we see Obi-Wan call him Darth.
Yes.
In this, and he does that, only a master will either, Darth. So there's a thing there, which, and you have like little bits like the first time he sees Luke, he says, hello there. And it's exactly the same as he does it in A New Hope. So you've got these little things that have got a consistency that if you now watch the first movie, also the number 4.
Yeah.
Sorry. makes sense.
It's almost like it's got to sort of retroactively fix some continuity errors, because, like, you know, a lot of people said after the prequels, you know, the opening line between Vader and Obi-Wan in Star Wars in A New Hope kind of doesn't really fit in the fact that he calls him Darth and all of this sort of thing. And like you said, with what they put in this episode, it almost kind of retroactively kind of
that tick,
fixes that a little bit. And you're right. There's lots of obviously there's the hello there, but there's also Luke says to Owen in this, "I'm not afraid," and of course he says that to Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, and so there's a lot of those sort of verbal references as well. Yeah.
I quite like the idea, like, again, you know, with the fight, we see how Darth Vader gets the scar on his head.
Yes.
Know, which when the helmet comes off. But I mean, I love that, but I'm very much of the opinion that I don't like destroying the myth of everything, that we have to go back and we have to explain everything, which stops it being a mystery in your imagination. And whatever you think it is will probably be better than what is written and put out there most of the time. And I just find this sort of whole thing of having to explain everyone's backstory, where they're from, what, you know, which is important, but like the mystery is what is so important. That's what keeps us coming back, not the explanation of everything.
No, I agree. They've kind of done it with Han Solo, and you know how he met Chewie and all of that, and how he got the Falcon, and we really need that? And you know, and likewise they've done it with Boba Fett, you know, and like you said earlier, it was almost when he was more of this just mysterious bounty hunter, it was a bit more intriguing than the developed character that we now have. You know, it's kind of...
I mean, the fact that you know, poor Heath Ledger, you know, passed away, but the fact that, you know, obviously unable to do another film, his Joker will live in that world forever of total mystery, which will give it will retain its notoriety and its specialness because of that. And I hope they sort of continue that with Joaquin Phoenix with his version of it, of trying not to show you everything, because I think it sometimes demystifies a little bit. You know. Anyway, sorry, we're going off onto
no.
DC world. This is
totally cool. We do that all the time on this show. So I have put up a few slides, so sort of few referencey little things. It's quite funny. So as George rightly pointed out, there we've got the Jedi or the Obi-Wan lightsaber pose, which I actually think is pretty cool that he did in the prequel. In the prequel films, and once again that comes back now. He's got his fighting mojo back, you know. And it was funny last week I was talking about his costume and the fact that his robes didn't have like arms on them, and I was wondering last week whether that was kind of a reference to the Star Wars action figures, you know, the original ones where they had vinyl capes, but
vinyl cape,
but actually it turns out if you look at his costume this week, it is a reference. I'm not very up to date with a lot of the expanded material, but there is a series of Star Wars comics, Obi-Wan comics, and the picture that I've got there on the right, he has literally got, you know, the white costume with the armless cape, and then even the goggles round his neck. So it's almost like they're completely referencing that, which no doubt is intentional. But you know, I kind of like that. The other thing you mentioned about the mask earlier,
Star Wars Rebels, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of really weird, because this was almost like a live action version of what we'd seen with Ahsoka in Rebels. For I don't know whether you've watched Rebels, but
I have not seen Rebels, so I can't comment on this.
It's almost better to not have seen Rebels, I think, because in some respects it took the power, for me anyway, it took the power of that scene away a little bit, because there is a scene that is so similar. It's the other half of the mask that gets cut, but it's very similar. And like they mix sort of Hayden Christensen's voice with James Earl Jones for this part. They did the same with Matt Lanter, who was doing the voice for Anakin in the show, in James Earl Jones. So it was kind of, it's sort of, I felt like, we've sort of already seen this, but which obviously comes later in the timeline. But there was that. And then, of course, Obi-Wan lifting the rocks. I mean, we all know that's how Luke in Empire Strikes Back started, by moving rocks and whatever. But it sort of reminded me to think of the sequels for a change, of the way Rey lifts all those rocks in Last Jedi. So I kind of got that feeling there with that one. And then obviously, as George rightly said, we got Qui-Gon, which obviously it was no massive stretch, but I was sort of speculating that we might see him in this show, and I'm so glad we did. We'll get into that. And of course the Emperor as well, which is great to see him, on the Ian McDermott on the hologram there, following up with Vader. Had to be done, I guess. And of course we see the Vader uses the shuttle, which is the same shuttle that we saw in the originally Return of the Jedi, but then when they did the special editions, they sort of retroactively put it into Empire Strikes Back as well, didn't they? So
still waiting for a series to make use of those red Imperial Guards, because they've always been such an ominous thing. And apparently, from what I've seen of like comic strips and stuff, they all have lightsaber weapons and can be really a bit like the Knights of Ren that nothing came about. It's like, well, let's.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. They completely wasted the Knights of Ren, didn't they, in the sequels?
You could say, who were the Knights of Ren?
Yeah.
Like, we never found out. Really. They would just mention. Well, that's the classic thing of not knowing. And I know this because I know someone that was in the writing room of the last one. That once the Last Jedi came, they were like, "We literally have no idea what to do because you've taken everything that was set up, ripped it apart, and we've now got one movie to solve something which has basically been started again." So
and still didn't answer half the stuff, and plot contrivances out of the yin yang as well, right?
Yeah, it's difficult.
So, least said the better, I suppose. But the next part, again, just a bit of fun. Obviously, we can't speculate for next week because we are obviously at the end of this series, but it's never tell me the odds or I've got a bad feeling about this, depending on your point of view. So, do you think, have you got any thoughts? Do you think is there going to be more adventures of Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine, meeting Luke and all of this sort of thing? Do you think they're going to do it, or are they going to leave it alone?
Can I just say, George, before we begin, can I just say, I don't know if anyone has ever said this to you, Keith, but I love your slides. These are great. Love the little bits. They are providing me with lots of joy. So thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. I do try and put a bit of effort into it, but it's more. You say about the memory thing. It's more to sort of keep track on things that we want to talk about, as well. But thank you. I do appreciate that. So
do we think there's going to be? I mean.
Well, there's kind of got to be, because otherwise A New Hope doesn't make sense at this point, because it's like, well, people know he's on Tatooine. How is he this homeless, hermit that's hiding away and secretly looking after them? Because everyone seemingly enough people know he's there to sort of ruin that. So I feel there's got to be something. I mean, especially with Reva, something's got to happen with her, because she obviously knows. And it's like, well, there's a lot of plot problems that have been left with this, but I have no doubts they're planning to go for a second one, because they've got a lot more they can do with it, and a lot of characters they've sort of hinted at and whatnot. So,
firstly, it's the biggest success for Disney Plus as a series, so of course they will do another one. So there is no financially they will do another one. So whether they need to artistically, they will do it financially to keep more viewers coming in. So we will do one, I'm sure. But I don't. yeah, I know what you're saying, George, because it's that thing of messing with it. Is that I have two major problems, and one of them is Leia, and one of them is Luke, because Leia says, "You helped my father during the Clone Wars. I'm not going to mention the fact that you saved my life and we spent loads of time and had a massive adventure." So that makes absolutely no sense. And then Luke is like, "Oh, I've never seen a lightsaber." And Reva comes out with the lights, like we have a fight in
yeah, I was trying to. I've only watched it once. I was just because obviously this week's been mad, as you well know. This has all sort of come together last minute, but I didn't get a chance to rewatch it. I don't rewatch much, like we were saying earlier nowadays. But I was trying to figure out when I saw it, because there's a few things that were confusing. I was like, did Luke actually see the lightsaber, or had he run away before she got to him?
The point is, you've had an assassin come in. That red light has come on. There's just, I just think it would, at that age, it would be something that you would forever remember as a frightening thing. And I feel like the problem with doing that is my reading of the entire original first movie, well, all of them, but particularly the first one, was Luke's, leaving home. One, yes. What is wrong with them having just a boring life where he doesn't have any action, and Beru and Owen don't have any form of action whatsoever? That he is literally put in a civilian's life without any of that. And number two, I would then be
what it's supposed to be, right? I mean, that was the whole point. He wanted to get off Tatooine because it was boring and life was dull.
And I don't think they would have died with the stormtroopers. They would have put up a bloody good fight, given they've got secret weapons in the walls and shit.
Yeah,
I was like, this doesn't. So you're fucking with things which don't need. It just is, for me, it's lazy writing. It's just that you've got the limitation, which is that's the limitation, which means Luke can't see any of this. So there's your limitation. And it means you can't go there, you can't, or whatever it is. But I just feel like when you dip your toe in that pool, then you're creating the canon upon canon upon canon, and then what makes sense, I don't know anymore. And then it splits audiences to stop caring a little bit. But they were my main problems with the entire thing, was that I just don't fundamentally believe that works. I think that Leia would remember, and I think Luke would remember, and I think that then destroys A New Hope and the beginning of that trilogy.
Yeah, it's the whole commerce versus art kind of thing, isn't it? Because the more they dilute this, particularly if they're absolutely obsessed with staying in this time period, the more it weakens credibility of things to come. But likewise, if it is Disney Plus's top show, they need subscribers. I mean, Ewan has said that he'd do it again. He's already gone on, and so's Hayden Christian, whatever. They've all gone on record. We know they won't die because of what happened. So
that's the issue with all of the prequels. Just do something new, because we know their fate. There is no jeopardy. There is no. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Obi-Wan and Vader have a battle in this, because we know they're going to meet again in 10 years or whatever, and that's what's going to happen. So there's no. You don't worry. You're like, well, I'm just watching a nice lightsaber battle.
Yeah, and that caused a massive plot point for me. I was like, well, why didn't Obi-Wan just finish him off there? Because he just. Maybe it's that Jedi thing of they shouldn't kill, whatever. But after your marks, you're not Anakin anymore. I'm like, that's the perfect opportunity for you to just cut him down, because you've accepted that. I mean, as a filmmaker, there would have been a very simple way to solve that. Is that literally 2 minutes later, he sort of senses stuff going on with Luke. If they'd done that at that moment when he's confronting Darth and actually is called away because of that and the immediate threat. That for me would have made perfect sense, and that makes sense. But him not finishing him in that moment just kind of took me out of it.
No, I agree.
You could have never have met Luke. You could have had Obi-Wan actually intercept it before Luke is even aware of it, and it would have all still made sense.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I like the bit between. In fact, I'm sorry. We're going into the next section, which is from a certain point of view. Which is basically these are our true thoughts on this episode, nitpicks, problems, all this sort of stuff. And what I was going to say was, following up on what you were saying there, George, about I kind of, from an emotional side and from Obi-Wan's arc in this show, from being this sort of broken warrior at the beginning with loads of blame to finding the Force again, being able to, Force connect with Qui-Gon, and obviously getting to say to Anakin, sorry, and Anakin saying, well, you didn't create me, I did, and all this. That was great. However, from a continuity point of view, I would have almost preferred it if after Obi-Wan had been buried under the rocks, that Darth Vader would just leave and just assume he's dead until that point where in A New Hope, he's like, oh, I sense a presence I've not felt since, and that would have almost made more sense. But the fact, like you said, the fact that Vader now knows he's alive, and also Obi-Wan sort of walked away when he had the chance to sort of end it and whatever. Yeah, it does leave a problem, doesn't it?
Well, also with the Emperor, it's like, why is the Emperor saying, no, don't bother with him? I'm pretty sure the Emperor would be quite interested in the fact that one of the most powerful Jedis is still harking around. It's quite, it's an underlying threat. And I don't know, just certain parts of it, I guess, just sort of, again, take away from the Darth Vader character a little bit. It's just like, because he's, him just leaving Reva and whatnot. I mean, maybe he can have the school of thought that he just doesn't think she's worth his time because she's just nowhere near powerful enough. But again, you kind of feel like, seeing as they keep flashing back to him taking out all the children and stuff, I just don't feel he wouldn't just cut her down properly and instead of just like stab her in the chest and just hope for the best. Because obviously, we know a lightsaber is going to cauterize the wound, so you're probably not going to die straight away.
Well, I mean, this was the crazy thing at the end of the previous episode was, I said this last week, but with those guests, but what I thought was kind of madness is we saw in episode 3 of the Skywalker saga that Anakin, when he had 2 lightsabers, decapitated Count Dooku, Christopher Lee's character, Count Dooku, right? He decapitated him. We had this thing, and again, I was a bit confused about this, because in the episode, we see Reva's lightsaber, her Inquisitor one, but I thought in the last one that Vader broke it in half, but I might have
No, he didn't. He didn't break it in half. It's one of those ones you can separate into 2.
Okay.
He just separated it. But,
yeah. Okay, fair enough. But what I thought was so stupid last week was obviously when she was a youngling, she didn't die because he stabbed her with the lightsaber. It seems that Qui-Gon's the only one that dies if you stab him with a lightsaber, right?
Well, apparently it's fine.
But then she stabs the Grand Inquisitor, and that doesn't kill him. Right?
He's fine.
So it's kind of like, I kind of just was like, well, why wouldn't he just kill her? But I know he wanted her to suffer, I suppose, but I don't know.
I just don't understand why the writers and filmmakers don't go, someone is going to say, how in the name of Zeus's butthole is the Inquisitor back? Like, and we're not even going to talk about it, we're not going to mention it. Oh, we're just going to accept the stabbing, he didn't die and he's back, he's fine. It's just, you have to ask things, you have to address them, or they have to be very clever. And the problem is they're just not. It's not that clever. Well, maybe it will be revealed to be.
I think it's the problem with Disney and Marvel as a whole. Really, is they just kind of assume that you've seen everything. Because I haven't seen the Clone Wars or whichever one has the Inquisitors in. I know them from the game, but apparently there's moments where he keeps himself alive just through sheer, want of revenge and hate and stuff like that. So there have been explanations, not for us.
Yeah, but we need to see that. I need to see that.
It's like what we mentioned very early on about General Grievous and why he's such a terrible, terrible baddie in Revenge of the Sith. But you know, if you haven't seen that animated series, you don't know why.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is, and also
because it's Mace Windu that crushes his lungs, isn't it?
Yeah, he's trying to escape.
Yeah, which again,
because at least with Marvel, that like you are at least in the canon of the films. So yes, you have to see all the films, and now there are millions of them. So if you're coming to it, it's very daunting. But obviously were around when it started, so we've been able to catch up. But they don't even do. I mean, I know with the animated stuff, you don't have to see the animated stuff for the films to make sense. I don't think, or maybe I'm wrong, George. But I feel like with Star Wars, maybe you do, and I don't have as much affection for Star Wars in the animated realm as I do in the
Marvel does it as like an extra, where in the film you'll get a little bit more out of the film, but you don't need to have seen the series. Like I know with Doctor Strange, if you've watched What If, there's more to it.
Yes, yeah, that's a whole nother one. But there you go.
That's a whole nother podcast.
It is. It's one of my favorite sayings, because there's always so much to talk about with this stuff.
That was the thing. I think you were saying what was the Easter egg? I know we've gone past the Easter egg.
Okay,
but hearing James Earl Jones, man, I mean, just hearing Darth Vader back again is just amazing. It's great, and it's nice to see, him back. Well, the character back on screen, and with it's really, really cool. It fills you with childhood joy in and it's great. You get to see him be so awful. We get to see a real side of him which we got obviously in Rogue One to begin with, and now he's realized here. And I actually think Hayden Christensen, for me, for the first time in this, is pretty good. I think he's been great in this so far, and I can believe this version, but I've really struggled with the entire prequel to believe anything that he said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
And he's learned, and he's become, I don't know, obviously the years away from it, and maybe, I mean, I know he acts obviously a lot, but probably not as much as Ewan McGregor does. So I think there's a desire to want to do it. And I thought he was great. I really, really enjoyed him in this. I thought he was very good.
Yeah. No, I agree. Even though the de-aging didn't quite work in that.
They just cut the scene, because the thing is, he just looks like a 40-year-old Hayden Christensen. Like they haven't even bothered to de-age when they've done Luke so well.
Yeah. The 40-year-old Padawan. Yeah.
Just couldn't be bothered to do this one. Okay, cool. But maybe that was what I was saying, a budgetary thing. Maybe they just didn't have the budget or the time. Anyway, I do.
Yeah, I have to admit as well. I mean, every week I've been kind of complimenting the young actress that's playing Leia in this show, because even though yes, there's lots of it that doesn't make sense, but in terms of her look and performance, I can completely buy that in a decade's time she's 19-year-old Carrie Fisher, or 20-year-old Carrie Fisher or whatever. But I have to say, and I don't mean anything against the actor they chose here, but I didn't feel the same with Luke. I don't really buy that he's going to grow up to be Mark Hamill. I don't know.
I mean, maybe just need more time, because I didn't really buy Leia at the beginning, because she was just very annoying. So basically, for me, she started working as Leia after the terrible market running away scene that kind of made no sense.
Right.
But after that, she came into her own, like basically from the point where she's captured and potentially going to be tortured. I was like, okay, and then throwing the nods to giving her the holster, and then having to try and repair the blast doors so they can escape and all that. Like she did come a lot, but it took me a little while to warm up. But I guess that's kind of the same with a lot of things when it's someone portraying someone else who you've lived with for so many years. It's getting used to their version of it. A bit like when me and Sam saw the Back to the Future musical, which is a completely different story, but you have to get used to it. It's not okay. It's not Michael J. Fox
I've got such love for those films that I've been kind of on the fence, because part of me wants to go and see that, but part of me is scared.
Okay, so my pitch. If you're worried and on the fence, the actor, I've forgotten his name now, who plays Doc Brown. Imagine if Robin Williams played Doc Brown.
Okay, interesting.
Right? Now that is what it is like. So it's a little bit like taking an actor that you really like and giving them a famous character to do something with, do with whatever they want with it. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I would highly recommend. If you're a fan of the films, I can't. It will take you.
They're amongst my favorite films of all time. You know, along with Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Bond.
People go dressed up. I mean, there was a dude next to us who dressed as Marty McFly in Back to the Future 3 in the pink sort of Western.
Yeah, cool.
It was more like going to a Rocky Horror Picture Show sort of fan thing more than anything. So I
only think it's on for another couple of weeks, and then they're moving.
It's right there ticking, mate. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, I must. Because I want to see more theatre as well. But it's
Dude,
time and whatever, right?
You won't believe the car. It's just amazing. All the work is incredible.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Fair enough. But back to Star Wars though. So I've got to ask you guys about this as well. So I like your point about the fact that Beru and Owen in A New Hope, get obviously completely butchered by the stormtroopers, but they did quite a good job of holding
the Jedi.
They're a lot younger, 10 years younger. So I'll tell you what, the twin sons must really age people, because these guys have got to get to the actors from it, and Ewan McGregor's got to get to Alec Guinness in the next 10 years. So
that doesn't make any sense. All of those things. I was thinking when you had the picture up earlier of Hayden Christensen's Darth Vader, I was like, I'm thinking of the actor in I forgot his name. That's terrible. In Return of the Jedi, I'm like, he's got to get to that age really quickly. He's got to get terrible. I mean, but it's...
And that's a problem throughout a lot of series, because it's the same problem with Dumbledore and Fantastic Beasts. They're just like, how did he get that old in like 10 years? Timeline, it's terrible. But no, that is definitely like one of those things that, there would be ways to explain it, I suppose, but it's just, it's too convoluted, and they're not going to throw it into a series. So you just have to sort of use your imagination.
Well, at least they're using the same actors from the prequels. That is one thing that I think is quite a good idea. Is they've rather than going out and trying to recast it again with yet another actor, they've used those actors. Now they're 20 years older, which is
Joel Edgerton is a huge actor in his own right. I mean, he's fantastic.
I think he's great. Good director as well. I don't know whether you've checked out some of his films, but they're fabulous. Yeah.
He's a very good.
Got a lot of time for him. So, okay. So one of the things I want to get into here is talking about our views and our nitpicks and whatever on the series. So Kathleen Kennedy pitched this as we were going to see the rematch of the century, between Obi-Wan and Vader. And I think, I like the way in episode 3 or part 3, when he came, he obviously ran from Vader and he was rusty and he couldn't really fight and he got dragged through the fire and all this stuff. And then in this one, obviously, he's much more of a match for Vader, and they have a good battle. But part of me would have almost liked more of that and less of the Reaver going back to Tatooine to hunt Luke doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It doesn't make sense that she's still alive. There was also, she got to Tatooine incredibly quickly wounded. When the Star Destroyer is still chasing Obi-Wan in the shuttle, and I still am a little bit. I know it was supposed to be vengeance or whatever, but I still didn't quite understand her motivation for doing it. I mean, it gave Moses Ingram a lot more acting to do, which was great. She had a lot more to do from that point of view. But from a story point of view, I didn't really understand that part of the journey, and I don't know whether I was just missing something or whether you guys have got a different perspective on it.
No, I think I'm in agreement with you. I just was like, well, what does she think Luke is to him, and what is she going to do with Luke? And like, it just sort of became, you know, maybe they're playing on the fact that we know who Luke is, you know, but like, I don't, maybe
there's no jeopardy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But then I think the thing is that when something is done well, you don't question it because it's been thought about, and because it's had a serious amount of logic thrown at it to cover it. But when it isn't, and you're just coming up with ideas of wouldn't that be cool, or wouldn't that be great, or isn't that, you know, I think that we're in situations like this where we're confused as the viewer. I don't know, George, what you thought, but I was like, so does she know that he's the son of Anakin? And if she does, what's she going to do? And like, I maybe I might need to go back and rewatch it.
It didn't really ring true to me. I mean, there was also that a lot of people have brought up that, you know, how does she know Darth Vader is Anakin as well? That sort of is not really. They don't really explain that very well, if at all. But yeah, no, I didn't really see her motivation, because it's like, well, aren't you about to do what you were, you know, victim to yourself? So I don't know. I just like I love the twist that actually the whole plot of her was to get Darth Vader into a position for her to get her revenge. I love that.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. But for her to then fail that plan, to then go, well, I'm going to go murder some other young kid, didn't really make sense to me, as you say. I mean, yes, you can explain it as if she did figure out it's Anakin's son. But the thing is, Darth Vader has no idea that he's, got his son and daughter out there. So it's not going to affect him if she goes out and kills him, because it's like, well, I had no idea I had a son, so you killed something I didn't know existed. So
exactly, because he doesn't find this out till after A New Hope, right? Before Empire Strikes Back. It's in that period that he learns about the offspring, isn't it? But I don't know. It just felt, as I said, it was great. An interesting character, well acted and whatever. So it was good that they gave her something to do. But story-wise and logic-wise, I just didn't really quite get it. I was like, what was she looking to accomplish? And sort of, I don't know. I was just a bit confused by all that. I mean, obviously, the time it took her to get the Tatooine and all that. Again, I know that's a Star Wars thing, because it was like when Luke was on Dagobah and the Millennium Falcon was in the asteroid thing. We don't know whether that was a few days or 6 months, right? Because they didn't really sort of line up. And I suppose we got the same compression of time and expansion of time here. But I don't know. I just felt like part of me would have almost preferred to not have the Luke threat, which isn't a threat anyway, because we know he's okay, right? And have Luke having that boring life on Tatooine, reaching for the stars, watching the sun go down, playing with his T-16 Skyhopper model that Ben gives him, and all of this sort of thing, and not have this sort of mini adventure. And it seemed to me that the only reason they did this was to set up a possible Reva series, spin-off or something. And it didn't seem to serve the story I thought they were trying to tell about this arc with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and this rematch of the century. Even though, don't get me wrong, what we got was really good. I've got no complaints with that. But it's just, I was just a little bit puzzled as to why this subplot was happening.
I think that what they could have done, I mean, and now we're doing writer's room moment.
Yes.
All this, but I was like, if she's lost everyone because Anakin killed everyone. And she obviously, that's how she knows, isn't it, George? Because Anakin killed everyone.
Yeah, but there's still the kind of like, but how does she know he's Darth Vader? Because as far as everyone else is aware, he died. Like they make a point of saying that Empire basically told everyone that he died in Mustafar. How would she know? Well, unless she walked in on him during the chamber, I guess. Is
right. But I think I've got a bit of a fan answer for this. I don't know whether I'm correct. But during the Order 66, where he was slaying the younglings in the temple and hunting the Jedi and all of this, he was already going by the name Darth Vader at that point, right? I believe. Wasn't he Darth Vader before he was disfigured and fought Obi-Wan?
I don't know if anyone referred to him about it. I think there's a moment where obviously basically Palpatine sort of anoints him as Darth, but I don't recall if there's ever a moment where he actually announces it to anyone else.
Right. Okay. That's a good point.
I could be wrong. I haven't seen it in such a long time. I could be wrong, but from my
I need to see it again. But but the thing I was going to say though is that what you could have had is, and they've not weaved this in, but like she's looking for redemption, and they could have had some form of redemption where she was involved with the rebels, or the group that are trying to get away, and she ends up saving them, or maybe sacrificing herself to save them for the greater good, or even with Leia. But her journey from that removed to something there that mirrored the younglings, and what she went through, which would probably be those rebels trying to get away that are innocent. And that would have given her a reason and a thing to change. But I kind of agree. I thought it was a bit, I don't know.
It just felt a bit hodgepodge, and she also didn't seem at any point sort of weakened by her, ordeal from the few hours or whatever beforehand. But
I'm so glad they brought back Rupert Friend as the Inquisitor, because I really liked him. I thought, because he even vocally has done something a bit similar to Ian McDiarmid. He even has that kind of voice like this. He's even got he's like his child, but I think he's very good. So I was sort of, in a way, I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but I'm quite happy that he's back because he was cool.
Well, it's weird. It's weird because again, I'm sure George knows about this, but in Rebels, he's actually voiced by Jason Isaac.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And I thought my whole thing when he got killed in the second episode, right? I thought, maybe then it's the same species, but a different Inquisitor, yeah. And I thought, maybe we're gonna get Jason Isaacs come back playing the one from Rebels, sort of thing. Because it was a bit confusing because you're like, hold on, he's dead. He was in Rebels, which comes after this, but again, they just jumped it anyway. And I've got no problem with Rupert Friend. I mean, I think he's a great actor, but it was just
when you've got Jason Isaac doing it before. Yeah, I agree. Jason Isaac.
Yeah, it was just a bit weird.
If you're in doubt on how someone survives, the easy answer is back to tank.
Yeah. We all need a back to tank. That's where it's going. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
But I think the thing I was thinking about what you were saying about the what was it, the rematch of what was it, the
rematch of the century, I think she was saying. It was when she announced Ewan McGregor, because at the time I think it was going to be a movie, not a mini series, and obviously because of what happened with Solo and whatever, they've sort of decided, in the success of Mandalorian, they've decided that the future of Star Wars for the time being is going to be streaming, obviously with the Disney Plus platform and all that, of course. And when Ewan came out and said he was going to do it, and I think that it was pitched as the rematch of the century. I'm pretty certain I've quoted that correctly. Yeah,
I remember reading something like that. Yeah.
I think the thing is that's total PR, and they won't have written a thing. They won't have written a single word at that perspective. Probably they would have been like, right, this is the idea. Is Ewan available? Does he want to do it? And then we'll announce it and we'll write it, and then but I think I mentioned when I was talking about Spielberg earlier, like when we've got action that has a point to it and it's storytelling action, then every move and moment is memorable and makes sense and has a dramatic effect. And I felt that with this fight, it wasn't. It was good. It was good, but I I could have picked up my phone and looked at some other shit while I was watching it, and it wouldn't have really bothered me. I know that's a terrible thing to say.
Well, I think it's because we know they have a fight on the Death Star in 10 years' time.
Right? There's no jeopardy to it.
There's no jeopardy, but the thing, it just wasn't. I don't know. Like the storytelling of it wasn't. What is one move, literally one move, doing to the other one, and how is that received, and what consequence does that make, rather than it just being a big battle for no reason. I mean, again, the thing is, I keep saying this, going back to the source material, but Samurai, it's one cut. It's build up to, and that's it, and death. And we keep doing all this flaring stuff, which is just so, it diminishes it quite a lot. And I think that there might have been something, and that's what Genndy Tartakovsky remembered, is that it totally had the samurai feel. And yes, it did some crazy shit, but it would do good, the bad, and the ugly. It would build and build and build to one moment and then over. And it was quite. And I felt that we could have done something a bit more.
They did that with the first episode of Star Wars Visions, which is obviously complete samurai.
That was great.
But I mean, interesting for me. Like I felt the same for Sam. Like I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed seeing elements of the Force and whatnot. I felt it was a bit unbalanced in places, but for me, the one I enjoyed more than anything, I much more enjoyed the Reva Darth Vader bit, where he just completely dominates her. Because I found that far more exciting, and also it was a more inventive way of a fight with how the Force is being used. Because again, I just felt the Darth Vader Obi-Wan, it was quite a bit of what we've seen before, but that one felt very different, and how he just sort of takes the lightsaber away and stops her with the Force and all that. It's just, I don't know, I found that more visual.
It doesn't have to be more stuff. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be bigger in terms of more explosions, more damage, more rocks. It doesn't have to be that at all. In essence, I think it should have been more intimate, rather than we're throwing rocks and rocks and rocks and rocks, and then you're like, well, this is just defying all gravity and what's happening to him. And I don't know, I mean, I did like a bit of Obi-Wan at the end, sort of becoming quite violent with it and almost going there and having to stop himself. I quite enjoyed that. Yeah. I tell you what, it didn't give me the feeling. I don't know how you felt about this, Keith, but at the end of Mandalorian season 2, when Luke turned up, I almost cried. I mean, we've been waiting. The music, I knew it, and it got me. Because it was storytelling. Because we saw that I've got one of they're like Terminators, those bots. Fantastic, right?
Love that.
We saw that they were so difficult to beat. They were totally outnumbered, and the only thing that could do anything would be a Jedi.
Yeah.
And so that was storytelling on an action scale that really was emotive and brilliant and surprising and all that stuff. I mean, you could have even brought Reva actually into that fight and her sacrifice herself trying to save Obi-Wan or get her revenge or whatever, and have a moment there. That would have been, and then you'd have that trio dynamic that you have with the Emperor, Luke, and Vader again.
That's a good point. Yeah, that could have been quite interesting if they'd done that. You see, I thought the fighting, I did like when they sort of did like the overhead shots and stuff. I thought that was all quite cool. But the bit that worked, and this is why I think Deborah Chow really excels with this stuff, was when they had the conversation. And that was quite emotional, and hats off to them as well. The acting was very good in that scene. But that was the bit that sort of kind of worked for me. But as I said, I think from a story perspective, even though that was nice, but from a story perspective, if Vader had left him buried under the rubble and just gone away, assuming he was dead, it would narratively make more sense with New Hope for me anyway. Even though I appreciate why they did it was important for Obi-Wan's journey in this series. I get that, but I do. It was quite funny as well about the in that conversation when Anakin stroke Vader says, you know, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did, you know, and all this, and then he calls him Darth. And not only does that kind of make sense with, like you said, their next exchange on the Death Star in that duel, but it also makes the lie that he tells Luke in A New Hope, it gives it again a different, it recontextualizes that, because obviously you know, as we all know, that the stuff about him being the father and stuff hadn't actually been written at that point, you know, and all this sort of thing. But you know, and then when he says in Jedi about it's from a certain point of view and all this sort of thing, it sort of makes that, I guess, work a little bit better than it did, I suppose. I don't know.
Darth Vader, doesn't that sort of translate as Dark Father? I think that George Lucas knew where he wanted to go with it.
Right.
I think that's. I think it's. I might be wrong. So I think it might be Dutch Vader for father. So I think Darth is Dark Father, and that's why he chose that even earlier. But I felt that moment with him saying I killed Anakin was that was a great piece of writing. That was a surprising moment, like I am your father. It was another surprising moment that we weren't really expecting. And I think that's the problem with Star Wars, is that that moment, I am your father, was so unbelievably shocking that we've been chasing the tail of that for ever since. And I think that Star Wars has an expectation to be that surprising every time, and I think that's so difficult to achieve every time.
It's a hard balance of so many things to get that movie magic, isn't it? Like
that moment is still just, you know, such a twist. If you'd never known it, it was so shocking and brilliant, and you know, everything you wanted it. And this definitely had an element of that was brilliant. I really thought that was very, 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 very good. And I agree. I think Deborah Chow handles the acting very well. But there were nice little throwbacks. The guy that Obi-Wan works with when he's trying to nick he gets in the queue early.
Oh, that's right. Yes, and
then he gets his comeuppance a bit there, which was fun. So there was lots. I felt like this was a tying in episode for all of them, you know, at once. So that they sort of, you know, sewed up.
Well, even with Leia getting, you know, dressed at the end is kind of, you know, it mirrored the first one. But obviously now she had a bit of a different perspective and purpose and all this. And of course, it's weird. You know, it's great seeing Jimmy Smits, but it's weird that he looks older now than he does in 10 years' time in Rogue One.
I don't understand why we're obsessed with prequels. Just do sequels. Why don't you just keep going on? Keep going, do sequels, because then you never know what's going to happen. It's you know.
Well, hopefully they're moving in that direction now. I mean, obviously there's still more to do with Obi-Wan, I'm sure, and a few of the other series, but they do want to take it to, I think, like, especially the Knights of the Old Republic era.
Well, I think Taika Waititi will probably, depending on what his film does and how that, because it's entirely out of the Skywalker canon.
Well, it's good. I mean, it's supposed to be this massive galaxy, and as I said, we focus on this, you know, 20 characters within a sort of 30-year time period, don't we? It's kind of like, let's do something else, but set it in that. Still have the sound design, still have the look of the world, you know, still have the Force and lightsabers and stuff, but somewhere else. Yeah, different characters would be good. But anyway, who knows what they'll do. Is there anything else about Star Wars that you want to say before we sort of talk about other stuff?
I mean, I'm still an excited viewer every time when it's on. I don't think I'll ever lose that childhood feeling of. And that's the thing, is it's all nostalgia. It's all nostalgia for your era and what it means to you and what memories it brings back of who, you know, of friends or maybe family that are no longer with you or any of those things. So it's linked to so much of your own personal history. And I think that every time you know, it starts a long time ago, Galaxy Far Far Away. those things. You just get that, or you see it's Lucasfilm. You go, oh,
yeah. I know. I mean, nostalgia is a powerful thing, and we're actually filmmakers, and it's something that's inspired us to do that stuff, and it's hard to put your finger on it exactly. But the same, I'm sort of torn with this, because whereas I've got a lot of nitpicks with this limited series, at the same time, overall I enjoyed it, and I was looking forward to every Wednesday to watch the episode. And it's funny, even with the if you go in stores like Forbidden Planet or whatever, even with the action figures, it's quite funny because there are new action figures that are, much better made, with better details and more articulation and whatever than the toys when we grew up. However, they also have this retro collection, of some of the, which are just the sort of 5 or 6 points of movement or whatever that they call, just the arms and legs and maybe the head, that sort of thing, like the old 3 3/4 inch figures. And it's funny, I'm drawn to those always over the better ones. Not just the characters, but the actual style. We talk about Back to the Future. I bought I haven't got it here to show because I didn't know I was going to do this story, but they've released, I bought Doc Brown and Marty McFly as literally 3 3/4 inch figures in the style of the old Star Wars figures, again with just basic articulation and very basic detail. And Marty's got his, I want to say life preserver, body warmer on, and a skateboard, and Doc Brown's comes with a little Einstein figure and all of this, and I couldn't help but buy it. I saw it in the rack, and it just did something to that childhood nostalgia thing, and it's so weird. I know I've gone completely off topic, but
no, but that's the point. That's what we're saying, is that Star Wars will still do that. And like some of my friends are, they have Star Wars fatigue, and they might be done with it. It might not be what they want, but it's Star Wars, as I'm sure George Lucas would always say, was for children, and that's how he always wanted to do it. But like, I suppose Disney, but Walt Disney wanted to make films for children, and we're no longer children, gentlemen.
Well, I there are people who might argue with that, but yeah.
Growing up is a trap.
I know. Admiral Akbar line. It's a trap. See, there we go. What about you, George? Any sort of final things about Star Wars in general, or Obi-Wan Kenobi as a series? Your emotions.
Well, I guess in terms of Obi-Wan as a series, I enjoyed it. It definitely got better as it went along, and I did. I suppose more than anything, the thing I enjoyed is just seeing more of kind of Darth Vader in the element we've never really been able to see him in, because up until this point, outside of games, obviously you've got that one wonderful moment in Rogue One. We haven't really seen him in his prime do what he does. And it's kind of nice to see that, and also really see that they've kind of nailed his fighting style. And you can see, like, that's what I really liked about this. In the prequels, everyone seemed to fight in the same way. Like this, they're very much stylized. They fight like it's what they kind of envisioned initially, is that everyone should fight in a different kind of sword style depending on what kind of Jedi you are, whether you're more force sensitive or less force sensitive or whatever. So there's been definite elements. I mean, I'm still more interested in Mandalorian at this stage, because again, it's that problem, as we've been saying throughout, where it goes. So I can't get as invested or be like, oh, what, if it's a side character that you don't know about, then fine, then you can get more invested with them than you can the main characters, because they're going to be ultimately redeemed, and they're going to turn up in A New Hope and whatnot. So yeah, it's been an interesting one. I mean, I'll definitely be interested to see another series and see if they again can tie up a few more loose holes, and also there's a couple of Jedis they might bring into the mix, which could be interesting. Whether they'll go as far as to try and bring some of the Mandalores really cross those worlds, maybe. We'll see. Because again, that's one thing we didn't get so much in this as we did in Mandalorian, is I felt Mandalorian really added more to the lore of Star Wars. and it added a lot more elements, like even like, you know, I know it's in comics and stuff beforehand, but the dark saber and having the Beskar armor and having that spear that you can fight, you know,
and stuff like this is the way.
Just I don't know. It had more new things. I mean, it's the same as what I'd say about the prequels. Like, if you were to ask me out the prequels, which is the best one, I'd always say the first one, Phantom Menace. And that's simply because as a film, I think there's less you'd need to do to it to make it a better film. Obviously, take out 2/3 of the politics and all that. Maybe make Anakin a little bit older to begin with. But I felt out of all the ones, it's the only one that really gave me some real kind of like childhood Star Wars moments. It gave us Darth Maul, gave us the double lightsaber, Duel of the Fates, pod race, and, you know, some of the new music, and also Liam Neeson. He's been the best Jedi, and, you know, as soon as he came on, I was like, oh, it's just he had the same feeling as Alec Guinness.
Yeah, it was so good to see him in this, wasn't it? Because I've been saying for weeks, I hope we at least. I was thinking we might hear him, you know, because obviously Luke in New Hope heard Ben, and it wasn't until Empire Strikes Back that he actually saw the Force Ghost. And I was wondering whether we might hear Liam Neeson, but the fact that we actually get to see him was...
We heard him saying, I have a particular set of skills.
Exactly. Jedi skills. But no, that was cool. The thing, your point about The Mandalorian, whereas I agree entirely, I am a little bit disappointed that in Book of Boba Fett, they kind of bring him and Grogu back together. I feel that they've kind of robbed us as to what they set up at the end of Mandalorian season 2 for 3. Do you know what I mean? I kind of feel shoehorned in, and I'm not sure I like that.
But if it was the beginning of season 3, would you care?
Well, yeah, because it would sort of make, I don't know, it would sort of make more narrative sense for some reason. I can't put my finger on that, but yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think it's time now to use the comm link.
Woo.
All right. So this is just where I want to. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. Yeah. So I've put links and everything in the show notes. But yeah, I just wanted you guys to have the opportunity to say a little bit more about your work, what you're working on, what you've got coming up, what's out there, all that. So go for it. It's take the shotfilms.com. Is that right? Have I got that correct on there?
Yes, that's correct. And basically all our social handles are just at Take the Shot Films. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So it's pretty easy to find us. I mean, obviously we just go on the website. We've got all the various links there. But these days, I'd say currently YouTube and Instagram are the two best places to see what we're currently doing, because they're the ones we're keeping more up to date. Content, just because we're very busy planning a feature film, which Sam can explain now.
Yeah, so Take the Shot Films very quickly. George and I, Fernando Ruiz, who's our DOP, and Agam Jain, our producer, decided to create this company whilst I had an idea to write a Western, which is up there, called Fall from Grace, which I've written. And we were very close to being able to make it just before the pandemic. The pandemic happened, and that put a nail in that coffin for a while. Although that is very much on our slate, and we intend to make that fairly soon. But before then, because of the pandemic, I worked on turning our dad's script, our play, Strictly Murder, which I think you came and saw, obviously. And we spoke a time ago.
Yes. And we interviewed you as well on Movie Heaven, Movie Hell, which is the podcast that I used to do before live streams or video streams. Yeah.
And, so I spent the pandemic fine-tuning Fall from Grace, and then adapting Dad's play into a feature film of On the Edge of Darkness, which we are now in pre-production for, and we will hopefully be making that early next year, which is very, very exciting.
Okay. That is exciting because sorry, just for, I don't know how wide an audience I get. I've no idea with this sort of thing, but for the uninitiated, for those who don't know, I think it's a really good opportunity. Just just explain to anyone that's found this who your dad was.
So our father was a writer and producer and director, actually, but mainly a writer is what he was known for, which was Brian. His name is Brian Clemens, and he was mostly successful or famous for probably the Avengers, writing one of the very first episodes and writing a lot for it during the Kathy Girl years, and then becoming a producer and being one of the people that decided that Diana Rigg should play Emma Peel, and then coming on, taking over as a producer from then on, all the way through to the New Avengers. And then he wrote The Professionals with Bodie and Doyle. We spoke about Golden Voyage of Sinbad. In fact, these two films behind, that one there and that one there, that's Blind Terror with Mia Farrow. That was Dad. And the other one is, And Soon the Darkness.
Oh, sorry, hold on. There we go.
And Soon the Darkness, which is...
Okay.
Sorry, I can't do this. I should have but yeah, he was a film and television writer, and he wrote for theatre as well. But I mean, an incredibly prolific writer. I mean, I think there was one point, I think in the 70s or 80s, there wasn't really many writers alive that had written more that was produced in the world than him. So he really had a huge output and impact. And this is just one of his plays that I think is probably my favourite of his plays. And I've been in it, and I've directed it on stage, and I felt that it deserved to be turned into a film. And and there's with the actors that did the play with us back in 2017. We got them together to help us make a little concept trailer, which is on our YouTube channel, which you can see.
Yeah, I'll put links below to that. Yeah. I'll also dig out when you came on to you guys came on to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell, and we did an interview about that, and then we did a Roger Moore tribute, didn't we? I'll try and dig that out and put a link to that down below as well. So if anybody watching or listening to this fancies checking that out, they can do so as well. Yeah, for sure. I'm dead excited about the Western as well, because my dad is a massive Western fan, and of course, growing up, because he was a fan of that, I saw a lot of Westerns, and I mean, you know, it's one of those things. I've always wanted to be in a Western, actually. But yeah, it'll be cool to see a Western. I'm quite excited about that. So
it was me going on holiday to Almeria and just realizing how amazing Almeria is, and that was the setting for a huge amount of the spaghetti Westerns, and I felt that why are we not making any more here? They're just the terrain and everything is absolutely fabulous, and so I basically wrote a film around the locations, and and so that's very much in the pipeline. It's just we had to sort of put it on the shelf for a little bit because of the pandemic, and other projects have sort of stepped to the front, but it is absolutely up there, and we will be making that soon. But even before that, we're making a feature this year, which is a horror called The Waterhouse, which I decided, because I thought we might be filming Edge of Darkness a little bit earlier, maybe in August. So I sort of booked a little bit of time off, obviously, for that. And as it's been pushed a little bit further, just to logistics and things and cast, which it's all very exciting. But I thought, I don't want to wait anymore. I just want to go and make a film, because I sort of do a lot of directing and other things, and I teach in drama schools as well, and I do a lot of filming for other people a lot of the time. So I felt I wanted to do something for me for once, and put all that love and effort and going above and beyond into something that was ours this year. So I literally, I think it was it was around May, probably the 4th of May the 4th. Yes. With you, I think it was that day I had a conversation with my girlfriend about this very thing. I should probably just write something, and I just was like, I can't. Is the effort of writing something is just you have to go, oh god, it's like doing homework. So I was like, okay, well, let's do something, and then I came up with an idea based on a location that I knew that we could probably get, which we could, and that has germinated out of that, and we are shooting. We start filming a week today, Keith.
Oh wow! Okay, exciting stuff.
Yeah,
so you just to sort of expand on this a bit more. So you guys work together when you make these films, yeah?
Yeah, I mean that's been our goal from sort of since our first short film, Gone Fishing, which goes back quite a way. But,
love that.
Ultimately we're aiming towards hopefully being able to just make our career of making and producing our own stuff without having the need to sort of jump on every job that's thrown at us just to make a living. So that's kind of what we're aiming towards. And thankfully, when we formed Take the Shot with Agam and Fernando, like we've got a very, very solid team that's allowing us to happen. Like the missing pieces for me and Sam are finally there, and I think we're onto something very good where hopefully that dream can be realized. And I mean, I'll still I'm sure Sam will still do stuff independently as a director and actor, and I'll still do stuff independently as a editor. But it'll be nice to be able to just have our own company, be making our own films, and hopefully take a page out of our dad's book and start following in his footsteps.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. Absolutely. I did struggle online, by the way, to find a picture of you both together. So the one I got there, I believe, are you there with
Carolyn Monroe?
Girl Caroline Monroe? Yeah, I thought
so. She was the lead in Dad's only directorial film, Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, for Hammer Horror.
That's right.
And she was also in James Bond as well. I think she was Spy.
Yeah. She was in the Spy Who Loved Me. Absolutely.
That was the premiere of our short film Surgery, which is on the Take the Shot YouTube channel if you want to check it out.
Yes, that again, link to that is below in the show notes. So yeah, please check that out.
If anyone else is interested in filming, and we were talking about Star Wars very particularly, and about virtual production, a little short film that we've got on there, which was a recent. We were the winners of the Straight 8 Film Festival, which is you get a Super 8 camera, you get one reel of Super 8 film, and you have to shoot it in sequence. There's no editing, and we decided to use virtual production for that on Super 8. So we used the most modern technology available with probably one of the most primitive in film, and put them together. And it's 2 minutes of. I feel like it should be the lost Spielberg John Carpenter mashup film of the 70s that never was.
I'm intrigued.
A lot of nostalgia.
Yeah. If we're up for nostalgia,
it's funny. I mean, I used to teach filmmaking, and I always told the film students that they should make a Super 8 film, because I said it's the best way to learn filmmaking, because you can't shoot the shit out of it like you do with digital. You have to plan your shots, you have to think about your story, know your edit, and all this sort of thing. And it's not that instant gratification. There's that little element of risk as to whether it's come out.
This is a high risk because you don't get to see it until everyone sees it.
Exactly.
Terrifying.
So that's quite cool. One of the other things I want to ask you about, I think actually, so George, before I do, is there anything else that you're working on at the moment that you want to promote while you're here?
In terms of as an editor, there's nothing I really need to promote, because I'm doing, I do everything and anything. So whether that's sports editing, corporate films, blah, blah, blah. So I've got a couple of short films, one called Supervision, which is looking quite good fun, and it was a nice one to take on because it's all shot on Super 16 by a friend of mine, Leighton Spence, and the director Sophie. She's it's her directorial debut. It's quite experimental film, but it's it's very well put together, and I'm interested to see how that comes out. So I'll keep you posted. I think that's just gone off to sound and music and grade now, so I'm interested to see how that comes back. Outside of that, I work on some interesting things. Like I was working on the press releases for Doctor Strange recently, and I've done quite a few of the Disney stuff like Shang-Chi, and then series like Succession. But as I say, they don't need any more promotion they've already got. The only other thing I guess I should promote really is that recently I became a member of the BFE, which, if you don't know, is the British Film Editors Guild.
Congratulations, man.
Which is great. It's a wonderful organisation, and it's set up in answer to, you know, ACE, the American Cinematographer Editors. It's like, you know, they've had that for such a long time. It's like, well, why don't we as British editors have an equivalent? And it's a wonderful organization. I highly recommend checking it out. They're always posting events, and, you know, it's a really good community to be part of. And, you know, that's why now you'll start seeing me having BFE after anything I do, because I'm trying to promote it and get it more out there. And hopefully, you know, as the years go on, it will start becoming a more standard practice, much like the ACEs, and it will become much more recognized. But I'm very privileged and happy to be part of it.
Great. I'm glad you've got initials after your name. That's awesome. So
you were just that's his nickname. Why is he called George Buffy? What's going on?
Exactly. Yeah. I was thinking, why have you put that there? But it makes total sense now. So there you go. Okay, quite a lot of friends that I have and people that I know do watch this channel and do actually sit through this stuff. Are massive.
Sorry, it's so long, guys. You've hit the 2-hour mark. Well done.
There you go. Well, we are wrapping it up, but I've got some friends that are massive Doctor Who fans, and I think it would be, you know, wrong of me to not mention, Sam. So you've done some work with Big Finish Productions on their audio adventures. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I started working for Big Finish actually because of Strictly Murder, the play, because a friend of mine came to see it, and we'd acted together, and I didn't realize that he was writing for Big Finish at the time, and he'd written a series called Shilling and Sixpence Investigate, and he said, after seeing the play, I want you to direct my audio drama. And I was like, I mean, I've been in a few of them as an actor over the years, because I know I worked on stage with Nicholas Briggs, who is the one of the exec, and who's the voice of the Daleks, and we've been good friends. And you know, he cast me in something, and then other people would cast me, and so I knew the process, but I'd never directed it before, and so I obviously was like, yeah, of course I'll do it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I will blag my way until I do. And then they took me around, and I shadowed a few directors, and then the first thing I did was Shilling and Sixpence Investigate, and the first person that I'm directing is David Warner and Celia Imrie, and I'm like, you know, it was a real baptism of fire, and they were absolutely amazing. And actually, we've just done season 2, which we're going to be releasing fairly soon, which was absolutely amazing working. I mean, working with David and Celia is just, you know, such a privilege just to sit there and watch these masters at work, really. So in between both those, season 1, which was 2017, I think, to now, I've been working. I'm very lucky and privileged to work on lots of different ranges, starting with Sylvester McCoy. So I've directed Sylvester many times as the 7th Doctor, and the one that you got there is Silver and Ice, which is the latest one, starring Bonnie Langford and David Rintoul and Jeannie Spark and Nicholas Briggs as the Cybermen, which is a great sort of two story CD or download, Silver and Ice. And so I've worked with Sylvester for many years now, and he's you know everything you want him to be. He's you know, he is Radagast. He is that person. He is Doctor Who. He's just a very nice man. And then just been on. I've done Peter Davidson. I've directed Colin Baker. I've done quite a lot of Colin. Fantastic. And now Tom Baker. I'm working with. Fourth Doctor. I've been directing Tom quite regularly for quite a while. Some of these stories are not released for like 5 years or something. That's, you know, we're you know, so I work with Mr. Tom Baker. Yes, hello.
Are you a Doctor Who fan yourself?
Well, as I said at the beginning, no, I wasn't, because it was not on television really when I was a kid. So I never really got into it. And then by the time it came back, when I'd say Paul McGann came in and then Christopher Eccleston, I was sort of an age where I was into sort of bigger films and things that, you know, just I think the level of production, I was more intrigued with, I don't know, something like Terminator or something, or whatever it would be. Or
yeah. It's a similar story to me with Doctor Who, actually. Yeah.
So I've come to it totally retrospectively. So when I direct these things, I'm learning about the canon all the time, and I'm learning consistently, and I like that. I think it's nice. So I always make sure we always have someone that's a Whovian, as I
yes,
make sure we have the right TARDIS ambience or the correct pronunciation of some alien or planet or something that we're referencing is adhered to as much as humanly possible. And I would say this is even more complicated than Marvel and Star Wars together. They've been going longer. Doctor Who's been going even longer. So. So it's a massive privilege, and I suppose one thing I haven't mentioned is that I'm doing the Avengers. I'm now the producer of the Avengers audio dramas as well, which seems quite nice now. It's come full circle.
I guess it seems somewhat relevant. Absolutely,
a little bit. And we released a Steed and Mrs. Peel one very recently, which was fantastic. My first one as a producer. I've directed quite a few over the last few years, but this is my first one as producing and directing. And then, varying at the River Song, I've done as an actor, and I think I've directed episode of that. And then Gallifrey is the latest big release, which is coming up, which is a huge 4-hour marathon saga, starring Richard Armitage, Ken Bones, Louise Jameson, Caroline Pickles, Sean Carlson, Chris Jarman, there's loads of us, and Nicholas Briggs again as the Daleks, Beth Chalmers, and it's a real sort of what we've been talking about Star Wars. It's in that sci-fi grandeur world, and so I feel quite at home with it. It's been really, I've been learning as I've been going, and I went to a Big Finish day recently, which was my first one, and I had the privilege of sitting down with Steve Noonan, who is now playing the First Doctor. And Steve is probably, I don't think I've met anyone more Doctor Whovian in my life. He remembers dates by what episodes aired when. I was born between this episode and this episode. So, I mean, and just sitting listening to him and all the other the fans that we met and everything, just what it means to them, it's just it's I feel very privileged, and I'm always trying my absolute utmost to learn as much as I need to. But I think also you have to take the story for what the story is. You can't be sucked into entire nostalgia. You have to tell the story the best way that you can. Yes. So both Silver and Ice is out this month. I think Gallifrey's out next month, and then most recently, and it's been an absolute, again, it's incredible to work on these properties. Is Thunderbirds,
right? Jerry Anderson,
yes, and Jerry Anderson was around at the same time as our dad, and they knew each other when they met. And Dad wrote for The Protectors, which was a Jerry Anderson series. But they knew each other and had offices close to each other. I didn't actually ever meet Jerry, but I know his son Jamie, and Jamie because Jamie directed for Big Finish, or still does, I think, and he's now the head honcho at Anderson Entertainment, and he runs that and all the output that comes out of all the new things that come out from Anderson Entertainment. And one of the things we're doing are these new Thunderbird audios, which are, I think, from sort of comic strips. And this is some of the new pieces that we're directing that are coming out, which is amazing.
Right. Aren't they? Have I read, or have I got this wrong? They're also doing. Are they reimagining Space 1999 on audio as well? Have I got that right?
Yeah, Space 99, and also UFO, and UFO, which is, or UFO, I should say, UFO. I'm in that as a character, which is fantastic.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which I was so nice to to be asked to be in it. I haven't heard it yet, so I have no idea what it's like. It could be dreadful. So apologies for anyone that I ruin your childhood. So I've been directing Thunderbirds and Stingray as well. We've done quite a lot of them as well. They were the novels that they turned into sort of audio books. So there's narration and audio play parts of it with the actors playing all the characters. But these latest ones, the Thunderbirds versus the Hood, these are more just straight audio dramas, so there's no narration in it at all. So it's a bit more time with the characters, and I get to work with the wonderful John Coleshaw, the actor and impressionist who plays Jeff Tracy. And Parker, and he is, as you can imagine, just perfect. And and Genevieve Gaunt, who plays Lady Penelope, who's absolutely fabulous. And I think someone you mentioned recently is Justin T. Lee.
Oh yeah, I had him as a guest. Well, I've had him a couple of times, but he was literally last week on to talk about his Star Trek Voyager animation, which is
amazing. It's incredible.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, those guys at Gazelle Automation do incredible work. Yeah, they do some Thunderbird stuff as well, right?
Yes, yeah, they did. They actually did a little piece for, there was this Jerry Anderson Standby for Action concert of all the music from all of Jerry Anderson's shows, and they did a little bit of Lady Penelope and Parker. But they obviously did it back in because you feel like, oh my god, they must have taken this from an episode, but no, they made it brand new, which is absolutely amazing. And Justin plays Scott Tracy, John Tracy, and the Hood, and Carball as well. So he has so he's really he
kept that one quiet. I was going to say it's funny. It's quite a small. It really is a small industry because it's quite bizarre that I know you guys, and I've met. I basically the reason Justin and I, to cut a long story short, he put out that Star Trek animation, and we were doing a show, talking about Picard, like this same format weekly. So if you're watching and you want to go back and check those out, please do. But we were doing a show weekly, and I just said to my co-host on it, oh, have you checked out this excellent animation done in the style of the 70s Film Nation show, but it's Star Trek Next Generation, and we were just talking about it, so I gave him a shout out on it, but he had found that and was like, oh, thank you so much for. I think I linked him when I did Instagram. I think I found Gazelle Automations and kind of linked them because we mentioned it. That was all. Mm-hmm. And he checked it out, and he said, he came back saying thanks so much. And I was like, well, I'd love to talk to you more about this because I've got hundreds of questions, like I always do. Yeah. Do you want to come on and do it? And he came on, and that was a great episode. And then of course when he did the Voyager one, I said, look, I know you're a busy guy, but do you want to come and talk about that as well? And he did. So
when he comes over, because he'll come over at some point, because when we do these,
right,
I feel like we were part of International Rescue once. We had an actor because he's in Canada. We had an actor in Canada, one in America, one in Budapest, one in Ireland, I think one or two in the UK, and somewhere else. And I was like, we really are all over the world. This is ridiculous. Yeah.
Guys, we all need to work together.
Yeah,
we need to combine our skill sets and work together.
I keep trying to get him over, so when we do another recording, because he's always doing it over clean feed from Canada, getting up, bless him, at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. to start recording. So when we're recording here at like 10 a.m., bless him, he's up at the crack of dawn.
Right.
So, we owe him to get him in a studio and meet everyone.
Wow. I think I need to get. I mean, we've talked about this, Sam, and I think I need to get you on another stream at some point to talk about audio drama or your work on this stuff, because not only is it the properties, that have got a lot of sort of connection and whatever, but we all, the three of us here, we're all massive fans of film, television, and theatre, but audio dramas, which anyone who watches this channel regularly knows my fondness. Audio dramas, whether it's Star Wars, James Bond, Blake Seven, whatever. I've listened to a lot of them. I've got great fondness for that. It's something I love to do when I'm driving. Yeah. And but again, it's a completely different. It's sort of connected, but it's different as well, isn't it? And we should talk about that, what it's like to sort of direct and act in audio dramas, because it's a different thing. And I mean, talking of audio dramas, it's really weird because that brings me to, in terms of related material, that there are Star Wars audio dramas, which I'm a massive fan of. And I did a stream a while back, which I'll put a link to, where I was honored to be joined by John and Maria Jose Tenuto, who are they're authors and university professors, but they're also experts on the history of the Star Wars radio dramas. And,
wow.
and before I had them on, I literally thought that I had read everything that was available, because I am obsessed with the Star Wars radio dramas. To me, it's canon. I mean, I'm more obsessed with that. Well, I'm as obsessed with that as the films. I couldn't say more.
Do you know what's awful? I've never heard them, so I'm going to have to go out.
They're amazing. I mean, I can't say enough good things. But if you want to, this is basically like a 3-hour conversation about the history of radio dramas in general, and specifically the Star Wars ones and the differences and whatever. Obviously, they didn't have all of the original cast for these audio dramas, but they're very, very well produced. Directed by John Madden, who, of course, is an Oscar winner for, Shakespeare in Love and many other. He's recently done Operation Mincemeat, which is in the cinema at the moment, which is fantastic. So I've had him on, and I'm actually pleased to say that later this week they are coming back on the show again to do a retrospective on Obi-Wan Kenobi with me. So, so I'm looking forward to having them back. And also, I'll put a link to another video. This is Home Media Minefield, this channel, and as well as these sort of things, I talk about physical media. Obviously, audio dramas come on CD as well, right, as downloads. So
give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
There you go. It's all connected. It's all connected.
I mean, just as an option, I get these.
Oh wow! Hold on. Let's get this bigger on the screen. There we go. Oh, in fact, let's do this. There we go. That's better, isn't it?
So we got Stingray, Monster of the Deep.
In fact,
Toy Tempest is played by Mark Silk, who's the voice of Johnny Bravo and Scooby Doo and Shaggy, which is great fun.
Wrong one. Sorry, I was trying to get you up. Oh, how do I do this? I'm trying to get it so you're the main one on the screen.
Oh.
I've messed it up. I can't figure out.
That's good. That's good. I'll just get it out of the ring light, which is terrible. So I'm trying to be. Oh, no. There's one.
Right.
Another Operation Asteroids and the Burns, and then the latest Avengers. Which we did.
So there you go. So available on streaming. So we'll put links down below for that, but also on physical media as well. And on
those, you just go to the Big Finish website and you can buy them from there. I think, and if you wanted them as downloads, you have to download the app, but you still have to buy them from the website, and then it will just transfer to your app.
Fair enough. And I've got, as I said, this channel we look at DVD, Blu-ray, 4K, that sort of thing, and I've got a little video there. I'll put a link to about how you can get the original trilogy, the unaltered trilogy, but unfortunately, it's not perfect. It's on a DVD and it's not a very good transfer, but they are available. So check out that video. If you want to find out more, you can get in touch with us at lswotcast@gmail.com. That's let's see what's out there cast, basically, at gmail.com. You can follow us on the social medias at lswotcast. Also, Home Media Minefield. If you're watching this, you're already on the channel. So please do check out some of the other work. Consider giving this video a like, subscribing, hitting the bell icon, all of that stuff. If you want to see some of my more creative work, I've got another YouTube channel called British Isles. That's EYLES, as in my last name. And I've got an anthology of short films on there called The Urban Chiller Tales. So please watch those. You can do them one at a time if time is precious. They're all under 10 minutes long. So check those out. And also, I need to say I am working on a feature at the moment with my good friend Mike Tack. It's a feature film called Car Cam, which we've started filming. Then the pandemic happened again. It held us up. But we have got back to production on this now. And I hope to have this finished by the end of this year. I just want to say thank you as well to Neil Myers for the theme music that we use on this show. His work can be found at neilmyersmusic.com. And I also want to thank, obviously, Sam and George for, taking 2.5 hours out of your evening to come and join me and talk.
It's a pleasure. It's fine. It's great.
Well, the thing is, we have done this so many times, in a bar or whatever, before we were able to actually, do it in this way where it now exists as a piece of media in the ether. Yes, but listen, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining. All your links and stuff are in the show notes below. Thank you for watching, and we will speak to you next time at the next Home Media Minefield Presents. Let's see what's out there. Bye for now.